When survival requires sacrifice, will you do it? Thanos believed the universe was running out of time. Resources were finite. Life was expanding without restraint. And delay in his mind was not compassion, it was negligence. He didn't see himself as a villain. He saw himself as the one willing to act where others hesitated. Not driven by chaos, not by cruelty, but by belief that someone had to make the decision no one else was willing to carry. Responsible for paying the price extends far beyond himself. This is not a story about good and evil. It's a story about logic pushed beyond morality, about what happens when survival becomes the highest value and everything else becomes negotiable. This is psychology of Thanos, and that's what makes him unsettling. Not because he is in the wrong in numbers, but because his logic makes sense right up until the moment it doesn't. Thanos is one of the most complex antagonists in modern cinema. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, he is a titan who witnessed the collapse of his own world, overpopulation, resource exhaustion, a civilization that refused to act until it was too late. That experience shapes everything that follows. In the MCU, Thanos believes balance is necessary for survival. Not because he enjoys destruction, but because he sees it as the only solution left when prevention has already failed. This is important because this version of Thanos is different from the comics. In the comics, Thanos is driven by obsession, specifically a twisted devotion to death itself. His actions are personal, symbolic, and irrational. But the MCU removes that motivation entirely. Instead, it gives us something more dangerous, a villain driven by reason, a character who frames mass destruction as an act of responsibility, who believes suffering now prevents extinction later. And once that belief is accepted, every extreme becomes justifiable. That distinction matters. Because we're not analyzing madness, we're analyzing logic. And when logic becomes untethered from morality, it doesn't feel like evil, it feels necessary. Thanos doesn't start with violence, he starts with a conclusion that the universe is finite, resources are limited, and life multiplies faster than it can be sustained. This is not a belief he adopts later. It becomes the lens through which he sees everything. On Titan, his homeworld, overpopulation wasn't debated. It was denied. Warnings were ignored. Solutions were delayed. Hope replaced action. And when Titan collapsed, Thanos internalized a single lesson. Waiting is more dangerous than acting. From the moment on, scarcity stops being a problem to manage. It becomes the core reality. Every planet he visits, every civilization he observes, he doesn't see culture, ethics, or individuality first. He sees numbers, growth curves, consumption rates, eventual collapse. This is where his psychology shifts. Because once you believe scarcity is absolute, compassion starts to look like negligence. Not because compassion is wrong, but because it doesn't scale. And when survival is framed as a math problem, removing half the variables feels efficient, necessary, inevitable. The danger of this mindset isn't cruelty, it's certainty. Thanos doesn't ask if collapse will happen, only when. And if destruction is guaranteed either way, then acting early feels like mercy. So the question becomes, if you truly believe scarcity is unavoidable, how much suffering would you justify to prevent total extinction? Once Thanos accepts scarcity as unavoidable, something else quietly follows. If collapse is certain and inaction guarantees extinction, the morality itself starts to feel negotiable. This is where Thanos crosses an invisible line. He does not decide who deserve to live and who deserve to die. Instead, he removes himself from that judgment entirely. By making the outcome random, Thanos reframed the act as fair. No bias, no preference, no personal selection. In his mind, randomness becomes mercy, because if he doesn't choose, then the universe does. But this also where responsibility concentrates. Thanos still accepts one role fully, being the one who pulls the lever. Not power for dominance, not cruelty, but responsibility. Someone must be willing to act when everyone else argues, delays, or hopes for a cleaner solution. This is what playing God looks like psychologically. Not seeking worship, not claiming perfection, but believing you alone are willing to carry the weight of an irreversible decision. The question is no longer, is this right? But can anyone else do what must be done? And when the answer becomes no, moral authority hardens. This is why Thanos sacrificed Gamora and still grieve her deeply. His tears matter. They show he is not emotionally numb. They show the cost is real, but grief no longer has veto power. Pain becomes part of the price he is willing to pay. In his logic, suffering does not invalidate the mission, it validates commitment. This is the danger of moral certainty under pressure, because once sacrifice becomes proof of righteousness, any cost can be framed as necessary. History shows this pattern clearly. Leaders who believe catastrophe is inevitable often justify extreme control for the greater good. Governments that suspend rights during crises rarely rush to restore them. Movements that begin with prevention often slide into domination, not because they start evil, but because they stop allowing doubt. When someone believes the outcomes justifies everything, resistance no longer signals caution, it signals ignorance, and disagreement stops being a conversation and becomes an obstacle. And here's the critical turn. Because once the world is reduced to outcomes and systems, people stop being individuals. They become variables, and control starts to feel more reliable than trust. At this point, Thanos doesn't see himself as a villain. In his own mind, he has already crossed something more difficult than cruelty: the willingness to take responsibility for an unbearable decision. But there's still one psychological problem left. If he chooses who lives and who dies, he becomes a judge, and judgment creates guilt. So Thanos removes choices from the equation. He insists the act must be random, not because he doesn't care, but because to him, randomness is mercy. Mercy without preference, mercy without favoritism, mercy without bias. Randomness allows Thanos to believe that he is not valuing one life over another, that no one is being singled out, that the universe itself is deciding. This is not emotional numbness, it's emotional containment. By framing the act as random, Thanos protects himself from the psychological weight of choosing specific victims. Because once you choose, you must explain why. And once you explain why, you open the door to doubt. Randomness removes that door. It transforms an act of violence into what feels like a neutral process. Not an execution, but a correction. This is what the Infinity Gauntlet matters to him. Not as the source of the idea, but as the instrument that makes the idea feel clean. The conclusion is still Thanos. The responsibility is still his. But the method creates distance. Distance from guilt, distance from personal blame, distance from grief, though not its absence. This is also why Thanos can sacrifice Gamora and still mourn her. He cries, he grieves, but does not stop. Because in his psychological framework, pain does not invalidate purpose. Suffering becomes proof of commitment. If the cost hurts, then the decision must be meaningful. This is where the mindset becomes dangerous. When suffering is treated as evidence of correctness, there is no longer a reason to question the goal. Doubt feels like weakness. Reflection feels like betrayal. Stopping feels immoral. This is the core risk of what is often called playing God. Not arrogance, not cruelty, but belief that moral complexity can be solved by distancing oneself from choice. The responsibility can be carried without being fully felt, and a decision feels objective. It no longer feels violent. It feels necessary. It feels balanced. After Thanos completes his plan, he does not feel empty. He feels resolved. In his mind, the universe is finally balanced. The suffering was necessary. The sacrifice was justified. And this is where the real lesson begins. Because the danger of Thanos' psychology is not that he believes something difficult. It's that he believes something absolutely. Thanos represents a mindset where outcomes matter more than lives, where logic overrides dignity, where moral certainty replaces moral responsibility. Genocide is wrong, not because it feels uncomfortable, but because it treats human life as a variable to be optimized, not a value to be protected. Thanos never questioned this. He never reopens the moral conversation. He closes it. And that's the warning. When someone becomes convinced that their solution is the only rational one, violence stops feeling like violence. It starts feeling like responsibility. This is not unique to fiction. History shows us that most catastrophic decisions are often made by people who believe they are preventing a greater disaster. People who say there was no other choice. Someone had to do it. The cost was unavoidable. This is the psychology of moral absolutism. Once you believe the end fully justifies the means, there is no internal limit left. Thanos is calm at the end, not because he is enlightened, but he has removed doubt entirely. And while doubt can be uncomfortable, it is also what keeps power in check. Reflection, restraint, the willingness to admit, I might be wrong. Thanos shows us what happens when that disappears. You can be logical, you can be committed, you can even be internally consistent, and still commit something unforgivable. The lesson is not that hard decisions should be avoided. The lesson is, when a solution requires erasing lives, when it demands silence of accountability, and when certainty replaces empathy, it is no longer a solution. It is a failure of moral imagination. Thanos believed he was solving a problem. He believed that logic, when taken far enough, could outweigh compassion. That sacrifice, if large enough, could justify anything. And in his own mind, he succeeded. But his story forces us to confront something uncomfortable. Not about power, not about villains, but about certainty. Because the most dangerous decisions are rarely made by people who think they are evil. They are made by people who believe they are being responsible, people who stop asking questions because they are convinced they already have the answer. Thanos reminds us that intelligence without restraint can become cruelty. That purpose without accountability can become destruction. And that believing you are right is not the same as being right. So the question isn't whether you would ever become Thanos. The real question is simpler and closer to home. When the choice is difficult, do you pause to question yourself? Or move forward convinced you're right?